City of Stevens Point Common Council meeting, recorded September 17, 2018.
At 7 o'clock, I will call the regular Common Council meeting to order. Clerk, could we get a roll call, please?
Jennings. Here. Shore. Here. Nabel. Here. Oberstat's excused. Johnson.
Present.
Slawinski. Here. Kneebone.
Here.
Dugan.
Here.
McComb.
I'm here.
Phillips. Here. Morrow. Here. 10 present.
10 present. Would you please join me in our salute to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. There he is. The weather is supposed to be getting cooler. It's clearly not. We are unseasonably warm, but nonetheless, fall is on the way. We have had a lot of activities going on in the city. Jazz Fest, of course, is over. Panacea is over. We had Art in the Park last weekend, the Blubber Run. There's a wood carving exhibition coming up, all sorts of things. And many of the people have probably noticed some big dirt piles over near Piffner Pioneer Park in the Riverfront Arts Center. That is part of Cultural Commons. Cultural Commons is on phase 1 of their construction right now. It's been approved by City Council many months ago. And it's put on in part by the Rotary Club and our 2 sister cities and partner city. The sister cities are Rostov-Veliki, Russia, and Gulch, Poland, and our partner city with the Wisconsin-Nicaragua Partnership of Esteli, Nicaragua, in conjunction with the Rotary and their anniversary, which is coming up. I want to point out that even though it's on city property, it is not a city project. There are no tax dollars that are going towards this. It's done through contributions from generous patrons, businesses, and interested citizens. The city does do some work with the irrigation, I think, but that'll make it more efficient for everyone. But I just wanted to let people know that that project is going on, and it's not your tax dollars being spent on this. This is private donations, which is one of the things that has always impressed me about Stevens Point. It's our ability to have people step up when there's a cause and contribute when they see improvements that can be made to our great city. With that, item number 3 is persons who wish to address the mayor and council on a specific agenda item other than a public hearing should register their request at this time. Those who wish to address the common council during a public hearing are not required to identify themselves until the public hearing is declared open by the mayor. Is there anyone who wishes to speak but has not filled out one of these sheets yet? Okay. Then we will move on to item number 4, which are persons who wish to address the mayor and council for up to 3 minutes on a non-agenda item. And we have Chris and Todd. Step to the podium, name and address for the record, please, and you will have 3 minutes.
Can we approach the bench, Your Honor?
All right, come on up forward. Todd Kukan is the Executive Director of the Portage County Business Council.
Could you come down and join us, please?
Okay. Where's the police chief?
Well, Marty's right there. So the city has been lost for many years, right?
Yes.
So we have found a very important part of the city. We are actually, this is Chris Fabrish with Mid-State Lock. For all your lock, ignition, and safety. Is that right? Is that what I was supposed to say? We were at an event, ribbon cutting actually, and we were talking with the mayor. And the mayor said, you know, we really don't have a key to the city. So we put our heads, well, we didn't put our heads together. He put some heads together with West Bancroft Custom LLC and Mid-State Technical College. And we thought we should have like an official key to the city. So Chris, would you please present the mayor with his official
Do not duplicate.
Look at that.
Facsimile of that lock when you give it to Fonzie and other things.
Sure. I met Chubby Checker this past week.
Do not duplicate says do not duplicate.
So maybe we do. You can get little ones away, but not the big ones.
Well, thank you very much, Chris. I appreciate it. Tom, thank you. Always a wise guy. Thanks. I thought we had a combination lock. Nice. Very nice. Okay, next up we have Alderperson Kneebone.
Yes, some of you may know, some of you may not know, I'm a Vietnam-era veteran of the United States Air Force, and tomorrow is the 71st anniversary of the creation of the U.S. Air Force. Aim high, hoorah!
Dun, 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 dun. Happy birthday, Mary. And with that, we have Clerk Moe. Clerk John Moe.
Thank you.
I want everybody to know that even, it's later on the agenda, but this is Clerk Moe's last council meeting with us. So be nice.
I just wanted to remind everyone that obviously we'll be having a November election coming up on the first Tuesday of November. The city is always looking for people to serve as poll workers, so if anyone is interested, they should contact the city clerk's office. We've got 10 polling places throughout the city. We serve 11 districts because we have one district for every aldermanic district. We currently pay $10 an hour, and we do shifts, 2 shifts, one in the morning, one in the afternoon shifts. And also wanting to remind everyone that we will have absentee ballots ready for in-person voting starting October 1st.
And where can they vote absentee?
They can vote at the city clerk's office down here in Stevens Point City Hall at 1515 Strongs Avenue.
Thank you very much. And as I said, this is Clerk Moe's last council meeting with us. He has resigned effective this coming Friday, the 21st. And because of that, we will have an opening. And we've advertised it already on our city website and social media. Put it out in the press. If anybody is interested in filling the role of city clerk temporarily until a special spring election this coming April, submit a resume and cover letter to my office or the city's personnel department. And we have a deadline of that September 25th by the end of the day. Okay, item number 4 is exhausted. We will move on to presentations. Because I double booked, we're actually going to have 2 presentations today. The first one is going to be Officer Christy Ahrens, who's going to talk to us about the Stevens Point Police Department's Crisis Intervention Program. Christy, the floor is yours.
Thank you.
Tom, can you grab the light, please?
Hi, can you hear me okay? I'm Christy Ahrens, Officer Christy Ahrens with the Stevens Point Police Department, and I am the Crisis Intervention Officer. This position started approximately maybe a year and 8 months ago as a full-time position that I work Monday through Friday assisting patrol. I wanted to explain a little bit more about what my role is. I follow up with patrol with calls that come in. Sometimes during the day I might assist them, or night shift may deal with someone or a situation that I can follow up with on the next day. I'm kind of exchange of information with agencies, kind of the point person for different agencies like Human Services or Inclusa. Prevention, a lot of times I'll try to make contact with someone, or someone will get referred to me so that we can try to prevent some kind of crisis situation from happening, and that's usually by getting somebody connected with resources or seeing how we can best help that person. Education, we work together with Human Services and Mid-State Independent Living, as well as NAMI, to put on education in the community. Oftentimes I'll go to schools, or school groups will contact me to see if I can come and do a talk on mental health and sometimes stigma and that kind of thing. Project Lifesaver is a program that's run throughout the county, and I'm kind of the contact person for our agency. Obviously, we have many other officers that are trained in Project Lifesaver. And I also work fairly close with the Family Crisis Center, kind of as a domestic liaison. This is just a list of some of the agencies that I work with. Could be on a daily basis, weekly basis, but pretty regularly. I think this gives a good indication of how we have connected and maybe found some gaps that we were able to close in on for individuals. And it has been a huge help with working with them, because I wasn't even aware of some of the resources that were out there until I started this position. So I find out the resources, I can pass that on to officers in our department, and they're able to give that information to someone right at the scene. Community outreach, I like to get I don't like to stay in the office very much, so I will try to get out as much as I can. And here are some places that I usually try to at least stop in once a week, or they may contact me with some questions, and that would be the Franciscan Center downtown. Our warming center, the warming center isn't open yet, but they will be in November. The Lincoln Center, adult day centers that we have in town, the high rises, Edgewater and Briggs Street. Our schools, seems to be sometimes the elementary schools, I'm able to do some presentations there. Our public library located downtown, and other assisted living facilities in the city. I attend a fair number of meetings as representation of our department, and that would be the Portage County I-Team, the Suicide Mental Health Awareness Coalition, Crisis Meeting, Project Lifesaver, Dementia Friendly. DART is Domestic Abuse meeting, as well as CCRT is more of a community response team. And then NAMI, NAMI is combined with Portage and Wood County for the affiliate in this area, and I play a pretty active role on that. Education. Maybe some of you have heard about the education that has been put on and that our officers have gone through. Crisis intervention training is a 40-hour week of training for law enforcement officer on mental health. It includes scenarios and that kind of practice. Crisis intervention partners training is something that actually we've been putting on in the community now, and that is a 2-day training. That's, like I said, in connection with Human Services, NAMI, and law enforcement putting that training on. And we actually have one coming up in October focused on youth. The Portage County Suicide Mental Health Coalition oftentimes brings in speakers for schools, whether it be at the junior high level or SPASH, and also other outlying schools in the Portage County area. NAMI also offers class, and I don't know, maybe I should have said this. Does everybody know what NAMI stands for? It's the National Alliance on Mental Illness. Okay. They offer free community classes. And then, like I said before, sometimes at schools or organizations will contact me for information or outreach. I like this saying, so I kind of put it in my presentation, but when I is replaced with we, even illness becomes wellness, because it's a community that helps everybody, and we all work together. So, thank you.
Thank you. And Officer Ahrens and the crisis intervention team here at Stevens Point, I can't say enough about their services. I know Christy and I have worked on a few different individuals, I suppose, over the past year, and without her caring, understanding, and dedication, we would have a lot of people that are in bigger, dire straits than we already have. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up, we were going to have Braley and Dylan, but Braley had a prior commitment, so I'm going to invite Dylan up here. He's the current Student Government Association Vice President at UWSP. He's going to introduce himself and take a few minutes to tell us what their goals are this year. And Dylan, I'll need one of those for the record up here.
Of course.
Thanks, Tom.
Alrighty. Good evening. How are you guys? It's good. So I'm just going to take time to introduce myself real quick. My name is Dylan Grippentrog. I'm the student body president vice president. I just promoted myself right there. Student body vice president at UWSP for the 2018-2019 academic year. I'm actually from Spencer, Wisconsin, so it's about 45 minutes away from here. I always say in my tours, far enough away from mom and dad, but not too far. I can't go home on the weekends and have mom do laundry for me. I'm actually going into my sophomore year here at Stevens Point, so I'll be stuck here with all of you for the next 3 years or so. So you'll have to deal with me for that long. And I'm actually a poli-sci communication public relations major. So the sheet I handed out to you is actually our goals list for this academic year, as well as it includes our business cards, Braley and myself. So if you guys need to get in contact with us, that's the best way to any of the numbers or emails on there. But I guess looking at the list here, so the front page is basically our main focus or our main priorities here. So housing is one of those things that we've worked with the city in the past on, and we've actually come a long way and actually got things in place. So on our end, right now we're just working on promoting the off-campus education program during our off-campus housing fairs, making sure that students know, I guess, like what to look for in a rental property, how to rent, how to access all of that information, so on and so forth. We're trying to promote the housing inspection program, which was recently put in effect, I believe, this summer. So making sure that landlords are aware, as well as students, how to, I guess, look for and what to look for in, I guess, properties. We want to promote our internal resources, so the Dean of Students actually has a housing page all set up for students with guidelines, information on how to find housing, all of that type of stuff. And then we're also looking to actually create a student housing guide with all of that information. Again, like how to find housing, what to look for in a house, how to be a, I guess, respectful tenant, how to be a respectful neighbor, that type of stuff. Because I know a lot of our student housing does, I guess, commingle with actual residents too. So it's really important that we make sure our students know how to be respectful and not, I guess, bug people at 1 in the morning when they're all trying to sleep on a Thursday night. So inclusivity, one big thing that's been a focus on for quite a few years now and probably will be, is educational programming. We always try to make sure our faculty and staff are up to date on all of the newest policies and are inclusivity trained or safe zone trained, something along those lines. I know it says facility services and our police force. It's really important that we get those people up to date on all of this stuff, just because they're working with students, probably interacting with students more than other people will. Of course, faculty will also be interacting with students quite often, but facility services and the police force, they tend to interact with them when they're visiting the restroom or in other situations that outside of the classroom. Our Native American Center currently is in our Student Services building. So for those of you that don't know, the Native American Center is a part of Diversity and College Access. So they're in the Byron Park Student Services building rather than the DUC, where the rest of the multicultural groups or resource centers are. And that building actually closes, I believe, at 5 or 4:30 when the rest of the departments close in that building, which is kind of a problem, mostly because all of our resources for Native American students themselves are in that building. So they can't access that after 5:30. Any educational booklets, videos, resources specifically for their culture, it just can't happen. So we're currently looking to find them a replacement home or a temporary home. One of the options was finding a student org office for them. We're still trying to figure it all out. We've talked to a few people. Hopefully we'll have an answer soon. That way we can get them a permanent home that's accessible to all students. Gender-neutral bathrooms is always a big thing on campus. Currently, we're just trying to make sure that all of the the bathrooms are posted, and there's a map to find them all. I believe there's a map that shows where they are in every single building, so it'll just say like, oh, the Collins Classroom Center has a bathroom here, and like the DUC, the Dreyfus University Center, will have one here, but it won't tell you exactly where it is in the building. So we're trying to make sure that that is more accessible to students. Sustainability is one of the things that we pride ourselves on here at Stevens Point. Currently, SGA has a bike rental program, so students can go, actually I believe community members can go and rent bikes. However, a lot of our bikes have been broken, basically to the point where we can't really fix them without spending a ton of money. So we're actually looking to abolish our bike program, sadly. But we're trying to work with the Office of Sustainability to get the bike share program back on campus. I know that affects students as well as community members, so it's really important that we get those back in Stevens Point here. Composting is a really big thing. We do a great job of it already, composting different materials, but we're just trying to get or excel a little bit more. So having compostable materials like straws, forks, plates, all of that in our dining service locations. I know we had talked with Mike earlier this summer, and he had actually talked about having a citywide campaign to get compostable straws or materials in all restaurants and food service places, or at least most of them. So that might be something that we can work on with all of you in the future, which would be really cool. So we're also looking to get electric car charging spots on campus. They're actually factored into Lot T, which is one of our metered lots. It's going to be in that renovation. So cross our fingers, we'll have some really cool electric car charging spots for students and community members to use there. The 24-hour space on campus is a really big one that we've been pushing for a while. Currently, the only space on campus that students can actually access for 24 hours a day are in the basement of the res halls. So it's not accessible or inclusive to all students on campus, which is a problem. So we want to find ways or find a place where we can put that 24-hour study space, on campus, so all students and possibly even community members, if they want to use that as a space to kind of relax and work on stuff, on campus as well. So that'll be something to hopefully we can factor into our Albertson Hall renovation, which for those of you that don't know, Albertson Hall is in major need of renovation. We're not actually sure that our fire suppression system would work in the building. There's overloaded junction boxes, basically, which is a fire hazard. I believe it's also a flooding hazard in the basement because there's that giant, dip down there where IT is, which is a problem because I believe the city and the county, police, fire, all of that, sheriff's office, all run at least some type of communication through Albertson Hall. So if that goes out, it's basically detrimental for the entire city. We're currently pushing to get Albertson Hall renovated, so we might be asking all of you guys as alder people to, help us out with that once we actually approach the building commission at the state level and the JFC, getting letters of concern. That way we can actually have a library on campus. We're concerned that if we don't get it renovated within the next few years, we might actually lose it. So they might actually have to shut it down, which is not a good thing. Every campus needs a library, and it's not just a library. That's the one thing that we like to push too, is it houses so many different things, from IT to our academic and career advising center to disability services. Now, if the library shuts down, we can relocate some of that stuff, but we can't really relocate all of it. For example, like library services, IT, they're just too big. We can't move them anyplace else. So, sorry, I rambled there for a second. But mental health, again, is one of those really important things on campus. We get weekly updates from the Dean of Students office, basically telling us what's going on from his office's point of view. And every single week, he's telling us that the wait lists for our counseling center and our health services, office are just rising. It keeps on getting longer and longer, so students aren't actually getting the mental health help that they need. So we're trying to find find ways to improve programming, make sure students can see signs in their friends, and help each other out the best they can. We also want to promote resources. That way students know where to go if they run into any problems like that. So I guess the last thing I just want to touch on before I finish up here is relationship building. One thing that the university has kind of struggled the past few months here, and we feel SGA has also kind of struggled, is making sure that students are aware of who we are and what we do. We want to make sure that students aren't asking the question like, what is student government? Why do they matter? So we're trying to, I guess, be more aware of what the students body needs, be more transparent so they know that what we're doing and what our plans are, going and talking to them, that way we can accurately represent them. Same with administration. A lot of people are like, who is Bernie Patterson? What does he do? I don't know what a chancellor is. Like, what is that? So we're trying to find ways to make them more human, I guess. A lot of people just think that they're people that sit in Old Main and that's all they do, but they do a lot more. So it's really important that students really, I guess, address that fact. So we have actually an ice cream social here coming up. I believe it's tomorrow, as the sheet says. So that'll be cool. We're going to have them out scooping ice cream and meeting students and telling them what they do and talking to them. So that'll be really fun. As for the rest of the items on the sheet here, they're all really important to us, so we're not sidelining them, but those are items that, I guess on the front page in that relationship building one, that we just wanted to push a little bit more than those ones. So if you have any questions or want to reach out and help us with anything, you have my business card, Braley's business card. Please let us know. The more help we can get from you guys on a city level, I feel like the better. I know there's a lot of things that your hands are kind of tied, you can't help with, but we're welcoming you guys with open arms. So that's about all I have.
Great. Thank you very much, Dylan. I have to say that the city and the university have had the best relationships in recent history these past couple of years. Dylan and Braley, we've gotten together, probably a half a dozen times, not including random passings in the community, to talk about all the things that the city and the university can partner with. So I look forward to this upcoming school year and getting some of those things on your list checked off. So thank you very much.
Forget your binder.
That concludes our presentations, and we will move on to the consent agenda, item number 6. One thing that I wanted to mention is at the Finance Committee, although it's listed as a separate item in the presentation of the capital budget, there is money set aside for a corridor study. That is in regards to Stanley Street. The roundabout construction afforded us the opportunity to test some signal lights at the junctions of the interchange there at 39 and Green Avenue and North Point Drive there. They were very well received. I got lots of positive feedback from the community. There's a couple of negatives as well, but what we're going to do is that money is dedicated to studying that corridor. Now that the traffic patterns have changed, we want to see if there's a justification for putting those lights in there permanently. And we have to go through a process with the Department of Transportation to do that. So I want it to be very clear that that is out. There was also an item towards the end of your agenda, item number 22, before we consider the consent agenda. Item number 22 needs to be pulled. That was a resolution for establishing absentee voting locations. Clerk, did you want to talk about that very briefly?
Aldermans, I have to apologize. We are not eligible to do this as we did 2 years ago. Back in 2016, the court ruled that a part of Wisconsin law was unconstitutional, in which it limited the number of clerks' satellite offices that we could do. Unfortunately, they left in another part of the statute that noted that if you do satellite offices, you have to do it for both the primary and the general election. And besides Madison and Milwaukee, I don't know of any municipality that can afford nor need a satellite office in a primary election. And so at this point, we'll not be able to do that. Obviously, we'll be making other arrangements to deal with the increased interest in absentee voting.
But absolutely, everyone can still vote absentee at the clerk's office.
Correct.
Okay. So that item will be pulled. And then In the minutes and actions of the Personnel Committee meeting of September 10th, item number 2, the request for additional staff with a non-levy impact. Director Ostrowski, you had some comments in regards to that?
Just one quick thing. This item was approved at the Personnel Committee. Within that request for the Community Development Department, there was a .6 administrative position that was requested. This year, we had allocated funds for a limited term employee within our department that we had. Plus, we also reallocated some of the inspector wages towards that position as well. Just wondering if there is funds available within the budget this year to cover that position, if we'd be able to go ahead and proceed with hiring that position this year. Typically, if we're able to hire before the end of the year, we may get a better candidate as a number of organizations establish their budgets for the following year, and then candidates are selected post January 1. But we would only do so only if there was available funds left in our budget, which there should be.
Okay, any questions for the director? Okay, any comments on the consent agenda? Alderperson Jennings.
Based on what you said about the money for the corridor study, that is being approved in this?
No, that was just the presentation at the Finance Committee of the upcoming capital budget. The recommendations were there. You are not approving anything at all tonight in the capital budget for 2019.
Clarification.
Yep. Any other comments on the capital budget? Alderperson Morrow. Okay. Does that include Director Ostrowski's request that if there's money available to be able to hire that position this year? It does? Okay. Second, I think I saw Alderperson Nable's hand up first and then it went back down. So we'll give the second to Alderperson Nable. Discussion there. Comments from the audience? Hearing none, clerk, would you please call the roll?
Morrow. Aye. Phillips.
Aye.
McComb. Dugan.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Jennings.
Aye.
10-01.
10-01, that motion consent agenda is approved. Item number 7 is an initial resolution authorizing the sale and issuance of general obligation promissory notes and certain related details. Comptroller.
Yes, so the pre-sale report is in front of you. Tonight, we would just be adopting the initial resolution, which basically says that we're going to go out to the financial markets and borrow some money for some of the projects that we completed in 2018. And also, we have our financial advisor here, Dawn Gunderson from Ellers, and I believe she's going to give us a brief overview of what's in the pre-sale report.
Good evening. As Corey mentioned, you were provided with a document that was placed on your desk before you this evening. It's a pre-sale report. It summarizes the issuance that you're considering by resolution this evening to start the process and authorizing to proceed with the sale and the issuance. As Corey mentioned, there are two purposes for this debt issue. One is your 2018 capital, which you previously approved authorizing resolution that you would intend to borrow at a later point in time. That time is upon us now, as well as some capital projects for tax increment district number 5. So what the pre-sale report does is it kind of summarizes the statutory authority that allows you to issue these debt. It describes the purposes for which the debt is being issued. It talks a little bit about the term of the issue and the call features. The city has a AA2 rating for Moody's Investor Service, so it will be the plan that we would consult with them again and seek a rating on this particular issue as well. So the resolution that you have before you was prepared by your bond attorney, Foley and Lardner, with the appropriate language to move forward with this. If you move forward and approve this resolution this evening, we will prepare an official statement which will go out to the market. We'll take competitive bids on this issue, but prior to that, we'll have this review with Moody's Investor Service to hold the rating. We would be back before you at your meeting on October 15th, at which time we would have results from a competitive bond sale. We'll solicit bids from the market. We'll be back with final interest rates on those issues, and you'll be asked to consider a resolution that evening. And then the information for closing, the cash would be available to you on November 1st, at which time you would reimburse yourself for any cost you have undertaken up to this point. On pages 6 and 7 of this document is a sizing of the issue. It defines how much you're borrowing for each of the purposes. TID 5 is $2,350,000, and your capital projects is $1.7 million. There's the issuance expenses related to going to the market to sell this. The total bond size then in the resolution is $4,140,000. On page 7 is the breakout between the two issues and the structure. The capital financing projects will be paid for in 2019 through levy dollars, and the tax increment district number 5 portion will be paid with the revenue from that tax increment district. The last page in the pre-sale report is just to kind of give you a sense of where the interest rates have been over the last 12 months period. It's indices that's tracked by municipal bond indices, and rates have escalated since last December, but they've been kind of holding fairly constant and fluctuating, but we're still, again, at a historical low rate of interest for capital financing. So I'm happy to answer any questions you may have with that. Again, the resolution this evening will allow the process to begin, and we'll complete all the appropriate documents and work with staff to move forward with the rating and then ultimately the sale.
Alderpersons, any questions? President Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, ma'am. Just one question. So right now, as of September 2018, looking at around 3.9%?
Are you looking at that table on the back? Actually, that is the bond indices tracks the 20-year maturity, and you're issuing for 10, so it will be lower. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. And there's no reason to think that our bond rating is...
No. So this issue probably will be closer, it'll be probably a little less than 3% or right around 3% for this.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. And at this point, we would be looking for a motion to approve the initial resolution authorizing the sale. Alderperson Slawinski.
Move approval of the initial resolution authorizing the sale and issuance of general obligation promissory notes and certain related details.
Thank you. Seconded by President Johnson. Any discussion? Comments from the audience? Hearing none. John, would you please call the roll?
Jennings.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
McComb.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Morrow. 10-01.
10-01. That is adopted. Thank you very much. Item number 8 is a resolution for a conditional use permit to operate a tavern at 2408 and 2412 Division Street. Alderperson Phillips.
Move approval.
Okay, we have a second. Seconded by Alderperson McComb. Discussion? Comments from the audience? Hearing none. Clerk, would you please call that roll?
Morrow. Phillips.
Aye.
McComb.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Jennings. 10-01.
10-01, that is adopted. Item number 9 is a public hearing on a conditional use permit to construct an outdoor amphitheater within a conservancy zoning district at an unaddressed parcel within the University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point's Schmeekley Reserve. Currently, it's the site of an existing outdoor theater. They're looking at doing some improvements, and the public hearing is now open. Anyone wishing to offer testimony, step forward, name and address for the record. We have Jim Buchholz signed up.
Yes, thank you. My name is Jim Buchholz. I'm the director of Schmeekley Reserve, and Jerry Leinberg is also here. He's the president of the Friends of Schmeekley Reserve organization. Very excited to be requesting permission from you tonight to build the Pankowski Friends Amphitheater. This is a project that we've been working on for the past several years. We currently have over 80 donors that are supporting the project, and it's a really neat project. It'll be made out of sandstone blocks with a rustic stage, be built into a hillside right next to our existing campfire ring, where compost garden area was. If you were familiar with that, that used to be the old garden of the house that used to stand on that site. So an already disturbed area. This will be open for use for our Candlelight Hike festivals. If you've been there, last fall we had 3,000 people that came, and we're expecting that many this fall as well. And students do a really neat job where they perform character interpretive programs based off of themes. But that amphitheater will also be open for other kinds of performances and plays and musical performances and things like that to both the campus and the community. So we're very excited about this project. We're very excited to see it move forward. I'm available and Jerry's available for any questions that you may have about the project.
Okay, thank you. Public hearing is still open. Public hearing is still open. And for the third time, the public hearing remains open. Okay, seeing no one else wishing to speak, I'm going to declare the public hearing closed. And before we move on to item number 10, which is the resolution on that conditional use permit to construct the outdoor amphitheater, I'm going to ask Jim to come back up to the podium. If you could, please, or the lectern, rather. Sorry, John. And you mentioned that the amphitheater would be available to the public and that there's student programming in there. Now, I know several of us in the room have attended some of those classes. Those are free and open to the public. If someone wanted to know what those classes were, where would they be able to find out information?
Sure, we have a website with all of our different events on the calendar. You just go to the Schmeeckley Reserve website, go to programs, and those are all available. Those are all run by students in the environmental education and interpretation program at the university. And so they are right now figuring out what they're going to be talking about, and they plan it all from scratch, and they develop it for the public. And so in the next week or two, those programs will be available at that time. Candlelight Hike Festival is already scheduled for October 26th. The theme this year is Bloodsuckers of Schmeeckley Reserve. So
very appropriate, because there's more mosquitoes out now than there have been the rest of the year.
It's a good time for it.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
Alderpersons, what are your wishes? Alderperson Kneebone.
I would move to approve the conditional use permit to construct an outdoor amphitheater within the Conservancy zoning district at an unaddressed parcel number as given within the University of Wisconsin Stevens Point's Schmeeckley Reserve.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Seconded by President Johnson. Any discussion? Schmeeckley Reserve, of course, is one of the hidden gems of our community, and if you're not aware of it and haven't participated in some of those programs, I strongly encourage you to do so. Alderperson Dugan.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I'm kind of sad to see the compost area go. I learned a lot that way in composting, but I'm happy that amphitheater will not take open space. This is space that's already been used, and it'll be a good place for it.
Great, thank you. Any other comments? Comments from the audience? Hearing none, can we get a roll call, please?
Jennings.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
McComb.
Aye.
Phillips. Morrow. 10-01.
10-01, that is adopted. Item number 11 is an ordinance amendment for zoning in regards to driveway and parking requirements, section 23.01 sub 14 and 23.04 of the revised municipal code. Alderpersons, what are your wishes? President Johnson?
Motion to approve.
Thank you. Seconded by Alderperson Nabel. Any discussion there? Comments from the audience? Hearing none, clerk, would you please call the roll?
Morrow. Phillips.
Aye.
McComb.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Jennings.
Aye.
10-01,
10-01.
that is adopted. Item number 12 is an ordinance amendment for the official street map of the city of Stevens Point to map and name streets within and near East Park Commerce Center, located north of County Highway HH and between Burlesky and Burbank Roads. Alderperson Slawinski.
I'll move approval of that stated ordinance amendment.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Seconded by Alderperson Kneebone. Discussion there. Comments from the audience? Hearing none, can we get a roll call?
Jennings. Shore.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
McComb.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Morrow. 10-01.
10-01, that is adopted. Item number 13 is assignment of the development agreement for 111 Division Street, the former Kmart site. Alderperson Morrow. Okay. Seconded by Alderperson Phillips. Discussion? Comments from the audience? Hearing none, clerk, would you please call that roll?
Morrow. Phillips. McComb. Dugan. Kneebone. Slawinski. Johnson. Nabel. Shore. Jennings. 10-01.
10-01, that's adopted. Item number 14 is a request from Scott Rashka to harvest hay from a city-owned property located north of Highway 10 and east of Badger Avenue, the former Bickford property, with the parcel ID stated there. Alderpersons? Alderperson Phillips?
Move approval.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Second by Alderperson McComb. Discussion. Comments from the audience? Back to President Johnson.
Thank you. Was there anybody who?
Nope.
Okay. I didn't want to intervene in someone's opportunity. I'm just wondering, I mean, all the birds have fledged and gone from that field, and there's no concern about birding that could cause a problem?
No. Nope, there isn't. It's a hayfield.
There's still prairie species of birds that do like nest there. They should be moving on shortly.
Yeah. We shouldn't have any problems there, though. Typically, you'd get multiple cuts of hay. We're getting close to the end of the season, so it'll probably be just this one cut. Any other comments? Hearing none, can we get a roll call on this one, please?
Certainly. Jennings. Shore. Nabel. Johnson. Slawinski. Kneebone. Dugan. McComb. Phillips. Morrow. 10-01.
10-01, that's adopted. Item number 15 is an ordinance amendment on officials, boards, and employees' salary adjustment for elected officials or poll workers and canvass board members. Alderpersons? Alderperson McComb.
I move to approve the ordinance amending the revised municipal code about election officials' pay.
Okay, seconded by Alderperson Dugan. And again, just for clarification, Alderperson, you are moving approval of the ordinance amendment as stated. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Discussion there. Alderperson Phillips?
As a worker, I think I have to abstain from this.
Fair enough. Duly noted. Anyone else? Comments from the audience? Seeing none, clerk, would you please call the roll?
Morrow. McComb. Dugan. Kneebone. Slawinski. Johnson. Nabel. Shore. Jennings. 9011.
9011, and that is adopted. Item number 16 is an ordinance amendment regarding traffic and the speed limits as it relates to the roundabout project, section 9.02 sub A. Alderperson Morrow.
The traffic speed limit as it relates to the roundabout.
Thank you. Second by Alderperson Jennings. Discussion? Comments from the audience? Hearing none. Clerk, please call the roll.
Jennings. Shore. Nabel. Johnson. Slawinski. Kneebone. Dugan. McComb. Phillips. Morrow. 10-01.
10-01, that is adopted. Item number 17 is an ordinance amendment regarding traffic for stop signs at Stanley Street at Minnesota Avenue intersection, section 9.06 sub A. And Director, this failed at committee, correct? The committee chose to not move forward with that ordinance amendment. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Alderperson Shore?
So I move that we postpone action indefinitely on this ordinance amendment.
Okay. Do we have a second there? Seconded by Alderperson Nabel. Discussion. And by indefinitely, Alderperson, I just want to make sure that I'm reading you correct, until we have more information that either substantiates or debunks the need for those stop signs.
Thank you for asking. The intention is a little different. It relates to the next item, and so it's about not doing all changes simultaneously and letting one go before the other.
Okay, and I guess maybe then we would just move to postpone without putting the word indefinitely in there. Indefinitely.
Thank you very much.
So the motion is to postpone?
My motion, just to simply postpone.
Is that okay with the second? Is that correct? Okay, so the motion here is to postpone action on this. Any discussion there? Comments from the audience? Seeing none, clerk, would you please call the roll?
Morrow. Phillips. McComb. Dugan.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Jennings.
Aye.
10-01.
10-01, that is adopted. Item number 18 is to award the Stanley Street paving marking project to Century Fence for the epoxy-based bid in the amount not to exceed $96,900.25. I have a couple of people wishing to speak. Trevor Rourke.
Yes, I'm first. 601 Washington, Trevor Rourke. Speaking on behalf of myself tonight, no committee or commission. Personally, I don't like the higher bid. It's not a beautiful number. There's no doubt about it. But I do want safer streets. I think it's time to keep moving forward on getting our streets to be more modern, more safe for people that bike, walk, and drive, and use the bus. So delaying, to me, is not, it's just an unfortunate process, really. I did sense some uncertainty in the original estimate from the last committee meeting that the Director of Public Works previously gave to City Council. So I'm wondering, with that uncertainty, is there some inaccuracy between that original estimate and what the bid came back at? So what is that difference? I'm really curious. One thing that I learned in writing, co-authoring the TAP grant as well as volunteering with the city is of something called eradication. Most alders probably know what this is already, but for those that don't know, eradication is basically the process of removing old paint. So in that process, that costs quite a bit of money, and I'm wondering if the director, in giving this number, included eradication or not. So basically, it would be a higher estimate if it was included. So I'm wondering if we can get clarity on that. And so I guess I'm asking if the director can speak to that eventually here. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for clarification, our current Director of Public Works was not the one who made that original estimate. That came in conjunction with Director Schatzsnyder. Is that correct, Director Badoon?
Yes.
Yeah, and when I had talked to Director Badoon, that was the estimate to the best of his ability. So I hope that gives you an answer. I could probably call the director sometime later this, or former director sometime later this week to get an official statement. I don't know if he'd be willing to provide that at this point, but at the time, it was the best of his ability. Okay, we have also Dave Wysocki.
Dave Wysocki, 2409 Falcons Cove. I'm a resident of Stevens Point. I live in District 11. I operate a business on Stanley Street at 2740 Stanley Street, which is, I don't know what it is, it's 2 or 8 or something, because they weave back and forth in there, but I am on Stanley Street. I've been involved with this thing for 2 years, and the last part that kind of broke the camel's back is this budget deal that came in at 45,000, and I think it was 50, and then it was 60, and all of a sudden it's 97. And we're also at a time where the city is struggling for capital funds. We talked to, it was talked at the last meeting where the city has to cut out $5 million out of a capital budget for, I think it's the upcoming capital budget, correct me if I'm wrong, Mayor. It was also spoken that what's been approved for this year, it's been in the media this week and pretty well promoted, that if this goes through, these extra funds, the money's got to come out of someplace else. So it's going to take away from something that's already approved to add to point B. That's the way I've been reading that. Also, through the last 2 years, we've been through a lot of things. I've asked for facts, bike usage on Stanley Street. I've never gotten a count on bike usage on Stanley Street, a real count. I've asked for facts about bicycle pedestrian accidents on Stanley Street. One alderperson never even responded to me. I asked my alderperson, Mr. Morrow, who got me the information within 2 days as to, I believe I was asking for a 2-year time frame from the police department, et cetera, the numbers. That was further verified by Mr. Badoon at the meeting in, I believe it was March at the church. I think his was a 5-year time frame, very minimal bike pedestrian accidents. I just wonder why this is, other than having personal agendas, why is $97,000 need to be spent with no consideration? I understand that there can be a speed problem on Stanley Street, but there's absolutely no other solution other than 4 to 3 and bike lanes. The flashing lights, your speed is. I equate it to Maria Drive, right by the power plant of the university, where there's a pedestrian crossing, and I believe there's solar-operated flashing signs. I travel that road quite a bit, getting down to downtown as I get around the construction. That's been there for a couple of years. That has really slowed the traffic, but it seems like the only answer is bike lanes and restriping and painting. We've also been told, well, if it doesn't work, we'll just repaint it. So you throw away $97,000, and what's it going to cost? We just heard someone say it's going to cost something to scrape the old paint up. You really need to consider what constituents want. People have been here a long, long time that don't have an agenda, really want to see done. I go back to that March meeting where I thought we had an idea that was pretty good with the flashing, similar to the Division Street lights by the fire station, to slow people down, allow people to cross. I think everybody there, if there had been a vote there from that night, everybody was nodding their head. We ended up getting told, doesn't matter what you people think, we're going to do what we want to do. You really need to consider, as alder people, that you represent people, not just your own agenda. I think I know which way this is going to go. I hope not. I'd have plenty of other comments, but I think my 5 minutes is pretty close to being up. That's all I've got. Anybody else wants to talk to me there, I'll be around. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And with that, we are out of speakers. Alderperson Phillips?
Yeah, I just wanted to make a motion to reject the bid from Century Fence Company to the tune of $96,900.25.
Okay.
I'll second.
Seconded, we'll give it to Alderperson Slawinski. Discussion? Director Badoon, I'd like you to come up here as well. We've recently been talking about some other options, including renting equipment, borrowing equipment, having the county do it, or the most intriguing one, actually buying our own striper. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, yes I can. I guess just giving some thoughts to what other alternatives we have, and doing a little bit of exploring for the last week, just to see what might better suit us, if anything at all. Some of the things that we looked at is to see if we could just get some equipment. I talked to the County Highway Commissioner, Nathan Check. He's looking into some things about potential usage, of equipment they have. I don't know what the cost actually of that is, but we're exploring that option. That also got us looking into potential other, equipment rentals. Big centerline machines are actually very expensive pieces of equipment, to the tune of about $500,000. However, we did find a piece of equipment that is used, similar to it, mounts in the back of a pickup truck for about $50,000. And that would actually be something we don't have. If you've seen some of the centerline works, we've got a good crew. They try very hard, but the equipment that they utilize really doesn't allow them to do those long lines, at least not very effectively. So, that would otherwise be a potential option as well. As far as the overall bid, we're looking at and how it's broken out there's just some of the things that we really can't do internally. Some of the things would be traffic control. We just don't own enough, equipment, barrels and things like that to do that length efficiently. So we would have to look at renting some additionals there. So there, of course, be some costs. Probably the most likely scenario of what's there to just come up with a quick solution. There is some of the things, as long as we're willing to accept latex paint, since that's all we know how to spray and all the equipment we have, would be just doing some of the work ourselves, that we could readily handle. That would be, the crosswalks, which is nearly $20,000 within the bid, and the signage as well, which is something that we can definitely handle. There, of course, would be costs for, paint for us to do that on those quantities for the crosswalks, as well as just, making up and ordering the signs and getting the posts. But those are things that we have a lot of experience with and can handle. All told would bring just talking about the bid price without the contingency, the $84,000 down to about $52,000, with, of course, we're understanding there would be some additional expenses, maybe $4,000 to $5,000 for equipment and things, considered labor costs. So there are some alternatives to this if we're concerned about the actual bidding price.
Director, the one that intrigued me the most was actually purchasing our own striper, because we could use that on all sorts of different projects. What do you estimate the cost for paint would be for that 4,000 feet? Just a ballpark?
The paint itself, I really don't have a very good amount. I know to do it right now as it is probably, should probably be about, really ballpark $1,200, $1,500 in paint. With the additional paint we were looking at, because right now we'd be about $600-ish, I believe, is what the streets department quoted me.
Okay, and the engineering for it's already done?
Correct.
For this layout. Okay, and if they were to choose to wait to rebid this in spring, not only giving us more time to explore some of these other alternatives for getting it done, but the potential, what, in your professional estimation, what could we expect reasonably to see in the bid?
Well, of course, there's no guarantee to what that would otherwise be. Our estimate, which when we finished the design and had the quantities, actually had AECom as part of their design review our estimate. They actually had increased it slightly, but we were about, this is about 20-some% higher, the actual base bid. I would believe that it's very possible to get somewhere between 10 and 20% in savings if we rebid it this winter.
Okay. Anyone have questions for the director? Is that a question for the director, Alderperson?
It is.
Go ahead, Alderperson Dugan.
Yeah, Director Bajoun, would it, I don't want to wait until spring, until April. Can you bid earlier, say in January?
In order to get things, rolling, that would be our plan. So with everything put together, we would roll it out, right after the first of the year. Try to be one of the first out on the street with it, if we did it, so that as soon as the weather would break, so instead of bidding in April or anything like that, we would be there as soon as the weather, permits it in the spring to get the job done. So
we'd have a contractor, and then they could start as soon as the weather permitted.
If we were, if we were going to do it that way, yes,
we should be able to get more than one bid, and it should be lower.
Given that bidding environment, we should be able to find, I would anticipate, more bidders with the competition and stuff. I would anticipate, yes, that we could very likely see lower bid pricing.
Any other questions for the director? President Johnson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Scott. I always like bidding in December. That's when they're hungriest. So that's when my bids all go out. So I'm trying to understand, you said a lot of things, but I'm trying to figure out what, in your mind, what this plan looks like. It would have been nice if you had something to provide to us instead of just articulating it up there. In talking with Nathan Check, I imagine he just said time and materials, because that's typically the way the highway department would bid anything?
Yes.
That's been my experience every time I work with highway.
He's checking with corporate counsel to see if that would be even an option.
Okay.
For this, because there are some things that kind of limit what he's allowed to do, so he wanted to confirm that.
They have a striping machine?
They do have yes, they do. Now, one of the things it does, it would be, if we use that option, I know we're looking at epoxy, there is set up to do latex.
They're only set up to do latex?
Yes.
They're not set up for epoxy.
Correct. So that would be one of the things that we'd also have to accept with that option.
And what is the durability difference between latex and epoxy? Estimate in years.
Estimate in years, typically you're looking at latex as being, the 1 to 3 year, depending upon, its placement in traffic and such. Epoxy is generally considered to be the 4 to 7 years. So it's roughly twice as, usually it should be twice as durable.
Anything else? President Johnson, you're done?
Yeah, I'm still trying to figure out what you're saying is where your staff would do some of the work. You were suggesting a portion of that done by your staff that they're able to do, crosswalks, for instance. So I'm just trying to figure out what you said in my mind, because you said a lot of different things.
Yeah, so one of the options otherwise could be, with the pricing is just that, we would change order out some of the stuff. So if we gave out the contract, we would change order some of the items to that, such as the crosswalks. It's just
so the Sentry insurance, not insurance, Sentry fence, sorry, spelled differently too. Sentry fence, but change out.
So yeah, we just put a change order in to remove some of the work items, and then we would just take over those. So there would be some cost to us, but would remove those. And there are significant components to it. Now, there's a lot of paint that we put into crosswalks for what we have there, because we're redoing all the instructions. So there's a lot of paint.
So
basically, President Johnson, there are some other alternatives. Because it came in so high, when we talked about it last week at committee,
and I wasn't there.
Previously, nobody had really asked about some of the other alternatives. So when I approached the director to say, what other options could we have, reducing the amount of work that Sentry is doing is one option. We also looked at the possibility of borrowing equipment or renting equipment from either the county or a private rental company to do the striping ourselves. We already have staff. Obviously, there's nobody sitting around, so something else would have to wait, but it would save us a significant amount of money. And as I said, the most intriguing one was actually buying the piece of equipment for ourselves at $50,000, supplying the paint and the labor to do it, and then we would have it for any of the other projects that we need done that relate to striping, because right now we don't have a longer distance striping machine. They're just hand push options. So those were some of the options I think that we had been discussing this past week.
It would have been, I think, probably helpful to discussion to have this have had this earlier.
It would have, yeah, I agree. Unfortunately, nobody had suggested alternatives to that, and after the bids came in extremely high that we were talking about last week, I asked the director to look into some of this. We didn't get some of this information until today, and obviously you know that we don't even have a solid answer yet from the county. But
right, I wouldn't expect a solid answer from them. So.
Okay, Alderperson Jennings, then Alderperson McComb, then Alderperson Nabel.
I don't have that. This is an interesting slow roll strategy. The language of the bid came in extremely high, and this has been circulated not only here but in the media, is misleading. The project in the bid was $84,000. On top of that is contingency, and Director Berdoon could explain contingency. The assumption is that contingency does not get spent. It's a protection against the job going over. But I have basically a question for the director, something I would like him to explain, and then I have a question for Director Ostrowski that I would like you to address. The $60,000 that keeps being referred to as a bid was never a bid. It was a rule of thumb estimate from the previous director. It did not include contingency, and I doubt it include line eradication. And it was not based on engineering. If it had been, we would already have the engineering for the lane reconfiguration, and we would not need to spend have spent $6,000 for AECOM to do that. This project is contrary to the mountains of misinformation in terms of how I'm referred to in this discussion. This is economic redevelopment, and it's prudent investment towards that goal. I will ask Director Ostrowski to address that comment, but prior to that, Director, if you could please elaborate on how the $60,000 was rule of thumb and what that's based on, and
Sure.
why we should not be relying on that as a bid. It was never a bid.
Yes, I mean, and from what I understand, having in the past talked to former Director Schneider, the original estimate was kind of come up with that conceptual thought process of what the project was, and then just applying what would be some, industry general rule of thumb, something you might find in a journal or some sort of, trade magazine sort of thing when they talk about, those, particular projects, which would reference so many thousand. I believe at the time it was actually $50,000, per mile, which of course, economies of scale, you would be doing several miles to get that sort of pricing. Then brought down, I believe, as I understand it, is where the 60,000 came in. That included some, very little economy of scale adjustment and the contingency. So it's that $50,000 number, just kind of roughly factored without, as you said, there really wasn't engineering, no quantities known, no official estimate made.
Thank you. And could I ask Director Ostrowski to...
Actually, we'll have the director come up to answer your question after we've exhausted all of the other alderpersons. Okay? Alderperson McComb?
I actually didn't have my hand up.
Oh, I thought I saw your hand. Maybe it was Alderperson Nable's hand then. So Alderperson Nable, then Alderperson Shore.
I just had a question about, do we have staff that could do a machine like that for that length of striping is a little bit more than just the norm of what we do already. That's why.
Referring to the county
Yeah,
assistant? If the county, they would actually come, it would be equipment and operator.
But if we bought the machine.
If we bought the machine, then it would incorporate several people. We would have to be, trained, so it would take us a little bit.
I just wanted to make that as a clarification, that having the machine doesn't mean we have staff that knows how to utilize that, and also the cost of maintaining that machine and everything else that goes along with it. I could see where it could be useful somewhere else, but we don't have that kind of expertise with that kind of machine or the striping for that long to keep it straight.
Correct. We don't have the experience at the moment.
Okay, thank you.
Alderperson Shore.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, a lot of moving pieces are popping up here in this very late.
Before we get along too far, is it a question for the director?
Less so, yeah.
Okay. Any other questions for the director? Thank you, Director. Just didn't want him standing up there if we didn't necessarily need him. I apologize. Continue.
I'm not sure. We're talking about this issue as if it's about the money, but it's not clear to me that it's really about the money. People are opposed to this. It is true that we've been talking about it for 2 years, myself as much as anybody. This idea of an agenda is strange to me. It's unfortunate to me. It doesn't give me much respect for believing in the merits of why to do this. Agenda, I don't know what that means. An agenda, when you have an agenda, it makes it sound, like I'm not going to earn a dime on this. It's certainly not like a hidden agenda. I've spent the last 2 years debating it openly. But coming back to my point, I'm hearing more about the cost from people mostly from whom I've heard are opposed to this. We can't count on the bids coming back a lot better. We can see, I believe, that market forces and high demand are the biggest driver here anyway. And we're getting this bid as late as we are because this bidder and another who were interested a little bit earlier didn't submit bids. Recall that they had some issues that they didn't clarify and then were clarified. And I don't think whether you look at it as $84,000, which is the cost, it's already been said that the contingencies on top of that, that's what makes it 96. Whether you look at it as $85,000 or the $30,000 that is coming on top of what was budgeted, excuse me, I don't see how that's going to help us with our $5 million capital budget gap, frankly. This is what it costs. You know, this is a debate where somehow we've lost a sense of perspective. A few comparisons. Okay. Prentice Street cost $2 million. Isidore cost $2.6 million. The roundabout cost $2.3 million. The incentives for Kmart development that we just voted on cost $2 million. The public restrooms for Fifner Park cost $300,000 to $400,000. Like, we're going to the mat here over an expenditure that's like a quarter of the price of the cheapest on that list, and a 30th the cost of the largest. I was happy to support all those things. In reality, the reality of how this works is the council mostly takes what we're given on the budget. That's because the mayor, the comptroller treasurer, the department heads all do the heavy lifting. You know, to build that consensus, make those choices. And believe you me, I am grateful for all the work that goes into that, truly. Fact is, most of the budget and development incentive votes around here are 11-0. But every now and then, it ought to be possible for an initiative, an investment in modernizing our community, to come from the council, especially when it's a relatively modest amount and has gone through 2 years of vetting. At the end of these 2 years, forgive me if I'm a little bit skeptical that, okay, we don't act now, and, you know, it's all going to work out in the late winter or spring. If we want to do this, let's commit to the resources. It's time, you know, for us to move forward. I mean, of course, as a potential cost-saving measure, the pieces that our department could do in latex, sure, that makes perfect sense from my understanding of it. It doesn't change the timeline. It's taking out of the work order, reducing the cost, taking some of that on ourselves. Those are the shorter lines, is why we can do them, is what I understand. It's time for us to move forward, you know. This company, there's discussion in the last meeting about you don't want to put the epoxy down if the weather conditions aren't right. As we also discussed the other night, this is a professional company. They're not going to put it down if it's not right. So, but it's time to move forward. This fall, if it's warm enough to put that down, fine. Change, pull in-house. That piece that can be, there's a savings there. But I think we ought to commit the resources. This is a debate with more nightmare scenarios that have been knocking around. I want to see what a lane conversion looks like. This is not a wild idea. This is happening all over Wisconsin, all over the United States. And frankly, we are behind the curve. I'm very confident that it will make Stanley Street more pleasant, the way it has for similar streets around Wisconsin and the country. We need to get away from having a four-way highway cutting through our neighborhoods, and so I support accepting the bid, and the motion is to reject the bid, which I guess that means I'll be voting no.
Thank you. Before we go too much further, I want to have Director Ostrowski come up here and address Alderperson Jennings' question. Alderperson, if you wanted to restate your question for the director.
Yes, I stated that this is economic redevelopment and a prudent investment towards that goal, and I'm asking the director to perhaps elaborate, in his view, the way in which a lane reduction helps benefit real estate and the area in that way.
I think first of all, I think the process that this took is unfortunate. I think it's caused a lot of division, which has created a lot of challenges, which also creates a lot of negativity, which prospective businesses and residents do see. First thing they do in going into a community, they're going to Google what's going on. Seeing this dysfunction does not help. So that's first. But in terms of your question about community development, economic development, this does have a positive effect on that. The reduction in lanes to pull the travel lane further away from the sidewalk, further away from the front yards of residents living on that corridor whose homes are very close to that corridor, similar to what we discussed with Business 51. It essentially creates a larger front yard, at least it gives the perception of that. It creates a safer environment for pedestrian traffic. And it also essentially creates a sense that they've gained a larger piece of property and creates better livability for those residents along that corridor. I think the other thing that this does is it creates the ability to promote some alternative modes of transportation. The city is in stiff competition with many other communities throughout the state and throughout the country in attracting millennials and individuals to the community to fill jobs. This helps get us there in a small way. It provides the ability if someone wants to bike down this corridor, they can. I don't see a lot of people biking down it now, and quite honestly, probably because I wouldn't bike down it either. It's not a safe environment to bike down, but given a dedicated lane for them to do so, I think is another benefit. But also creating and doing small investments, sometimes large investments at our entry points is very beneficial. This is probably one small piece as we look at possibly doing the corridor study along this corridor to determine what else we can do to have an entry point into our community, similar to what we've done with the roundabout on North Point and Division Street. There was a lot of concerns about that infrastructure going in, but it's worked wonderfully. It's created a wonderful entry point into our community that many have been very proud of. So. Cost aside, I think this project has a very positive impact economic development-wise and community development-wise.
Okay. Any other questions for Director Ostrowski before we let him sit down? Okay. Thank you, Director. Other people, Alderperson McComb.
Yeah, our 2019 budget requests $2,534, for street repairs. And I know that people in the public have been demanding street repairs. So that's, of course, not going to cover all our street repairs. But along with street repairs, I mean, that is more than was allocated or asked for or granted last year. And I understand we need to repair and maintain our streets, but I believe as a council and as a staff that we also, excuse me, sorry. It's also our charge to design and develop for change and progress. And that's what I see this project does. It affects Stevens Point as a whole, and I've been told that I'm not empathizing enough with the people who live on the corridor. But it does affect Stevens Point as a whole. In our last city council meeting, Mayor Wiesa referred to tourism dollars and visits to Stevens Point as a first date to Stevens Point, and perhaps encouraging people to move to Stevens Point. Well, as an entry to Stevens Point, Stanley Street could be considered a first date. And I think as a first date, it could be a lot more attractive in terms of calmness, in terms of different kinds of transportation. And so that's one thing it could do. It could be a better first date with a restriping. It is near other bicycle and pedestrian trails. And again, it's mostly residential. Stanley Street was overbuilt years ago, and restriping it could return it to, I remember it when I was a kid, you know, it was a nice wide 2-lane street. Restriping it could return it to a fully functional roadway instead of the sort of highway-ish way it is now. I support this expenditure. I think it would be great if we could do some of it ourselves. But I think it's an investment in a future Stevens Point, one with good, friendly, viable connections between neighborhoods, one that invites visitors in, that makes that neighborhood more attractive, and that helps the economy. It's time to do this thing. I'm going to be voting no on the motion, and I'm hoping we can work with our Director of Public Works to recraft accept the bid with some change orders. However, that I know that Attorney Beveridge can tell us how to do that.
Excuse me.
Okay, we'll go with Alderperson Dugan, then President Johnson.
I just want to address some of the issues that people have brought to me. I'm the alder for a very long expanse of Stanley Street, and particularly the area that goes out into the business area, less residential. The people who have called in opposition, we've heard from before. Some of them simply don't want bike lanes because, as one of the people here said, oh, no one uses it. Well, as Director Ostrowski said, no, it's too dangerous, and that's why I don't use it. I've used it on a Sunday, and that's about it, when there's hardly anybody out there in the afternoon. If we had room for bike lanes, people would use it. People who protest say, you know, it's too much money. Well, I think Alder Shore just put that into perspective in view of how much other things cost. This is a very small amount, and I agree with him that it is one of the first things the council has put forward under their own initiative, which is wonderful. I'd like to be a part of that. I've got a couple of calls recently and emails regarding the fact that we need that as a 4-lane highway. People are coming off the interstate, people are coming from Hull, and they're trying to get to school, they're trying to get to work. We need those 4 lanes. Well, my answer to that is not necessarily that we need it to be neighborhood friendly, but one of the reasons it's different now than it was when Alder McComb was a kid and when I first moved to that neighborhood is that we have many more commuters now. We have many more people living in Hull or even out in our subdivisions. We have 2 of them out there. And they are coming, you know, into town. Nonetheless, they're speeding. We don't have enough police staff to catch them all. And most people who are against this will say, yes, there's too much speeding. We know about that. But then get enforcement. Well, I told one guy we can't afford that. This is a lot cheaper than getting a new patrol officer out there. It would cost $90,000 every year after that. So those are some of the answers. But we haven't, you know, the people who are against this don't refer to the May 15th meeting, I think it was, where many people came forward. And I counted them recently.
Alderperson, I just need to be clear, because we've gotten off track a couple of times. We're not debating the merits of the restriping. We are only talking about awarding the bid for the restriping tonight.
I know. But just one last mention here. There were...
If a point of order, can someone clarify why the merits are out of order?
Sure.
Good morning.
Attorney Beveridge?
Good question.
I certainly think that when looking at a bid for a project, that discussing whether it is worth it to do that project is within the realm of germane to the conversation. So leave it to the body to address the point of order, though, in terms of preference of the council for sustaining or denying the point of order.
I really think we've beat up the merits of yes, do it, don't do it.
Well, we haven't mentioned
to do it. Now we're
haven't
talking
mentioned
about
the fact that there were a lot of businesses in favor of this, and there were a lot of residents who came forward, like me, a couple of blocks away from it, who came forward and said, this would slow down traffic, it would make it easier for our access, and by the way, it might make it easier for pedestrians and cyclists. So that's all I have to say.
Okay. President Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and if it pleases the body. I had a number of contacts by constituents, and not a one of them said they were against this. They were concerned about the cost. And when we sat and talked about it, a couple more emails, one was a text, so many forms of communications. My understanding is that Stanley Street needs to be restriped anyway. So sometime very soon, we'd have to have a level of expenditure on that corridor. And I explained that, of course, the $60,000 was this wonderful ballpark where we all wanted to rest and feel happy, joy on it. It didn't quite work that way. It probably should have been better rooted in some better numbers. Like I know the police chief has been working on some of the things over at the police department, and he's been working with an architect, getting some pretty good numbers. You want to be able to rely on those numbers. We relied on a number that probably wasn't quite as good as it could have been. And I understand that some people don't want it. That's always going to be the case. But I think as a council, if that were the case, we certainly wouldn't be seeing a development over at the Grand School site, because if you recall, there were quite a few people who were very upset about that and very opposed to it. They really felt it was changing the character of their neighborhood. In fact, they had pages upon pages of signatures in opposition. Yet we knew it was the right thing for all of Stevens Point. And we respected all of those fine people and their concerns, the gentleman with his guitar in his front porch, and the people on Stanley Street. We do not disrespect them. We're just thinking of things in a different form than they are. So I think, the corridor needs striping. If this is just a public works project, and if we would be striping it the standard way, we wouldn't probably be having this conversation. So I support doing this. I travel extensively throughout the state. I travel on 3 to 4 or 4 to 3 conversions. I think they're a wonderful way to travel through communities. You actually slow down and notice businesses and beautiful homes, and are aware of people walking on the sidewalk so that you can move safely through those corridors. So I will, too, be voting against the motion.
Thank you. Anyone else who hasn't spoken yet that wishes to speak? Alderperson Kneebone, then Alderperson Slowinski, and then Alderperson Phillips, and then we'll get to the second round.
I actually thought of a question for the director, and he probably doesn't have to get up to answer it. Is it safe to apply epoxy at this time of the year? If not, what will happen? Will we get a guarantee if it's done and it doesn't stick?
Yeah, I want.
I would hope we'd get a guarantee. I don't know if those microphones are on, Director, but you can try it.
Yes, on the lights on.
Lights on. So, it's otherwise still, reasonable to do that. We'll just have to be cognizant of the weather and upcoming weather. So we'll be watching the forecast. Neither paint, both paints, no matter what it is, or coverings, whether it's epoxy, they have limitations, so we'll have to monitor. But, we still have a little bit of time to put down.
Okay, and we would put something, I assume, in the contract that if it peeled up or something, they would have to redo it, whether that's spring or Christmas time.
Correct.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Alderperson?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, then Alderperson Slowinski, then Alderperson Phillips.
I wasn't going to really speak tonight on my opposition to this whole project, but being that others have had a chance to give reasons why it should happen, I'm going to basically say my reasons why I don't think it should happen, and it's it boils down to safety. We've heard tonight, they're going to make this corridor safer. We're going to make this corridor safer. It's going to be more pleasant. Well, this corridor is a main artery coming into our city. It's not a city neighborhood street. Even though there are houses on it, it still has to move traffic. It's a main artery coming in and out of our city. At busy times of the day, that road is busy. And I'm concerned by, going to the one lane, it's going to get congested in there. And one of the concerns that was brought up initially was, pedestrians trying to cross, specifically, I think it was at Minnesota. Well, it was brought to us tonight to put stop signs there, and we pulled it. We're not even accomplishing one of our goals that we wanted to accomplish in the beginning of helping pedestrians cross that street. Now, granted, you shorten or remove travel lanes, it's going to be easier to cross. I understand that, but I just feel that certain times of the day, this street is going to be congested, for instance, in the morning and the afternoons. And what's going to happen? People are going to be taking side streets to try to beat the rush and try to get around that jam. Now you're going to have residents calling. People are speeding down these side streets that are not designed for traffic. So we're basically just going to divert this traffic. Now, granted, there's going to be certain times of the day where this is going to function well, but I am very concerned about the busy times. And we're not even addressing the ability for pedestrians to cross the street during busy times. And I mean, how much is that going to cost if we go later and we want to put one of those beacons in? Or I strongly believe that the stop signs will not work. I mean, even AECOM said that you're going to cause a lot of congestion, with those two controlled intersections so close together as Minnesota and Michigan. So again, we're spending more money than was budgeted for or was estimated for, and we're not even, in my mind, we're not solving the problem.
Okay, thank you. Alderperson Phillips.
Well, I guess I made the motion, so I'm going to say why. Part of our job as being alderman is being a good steward of taxpayer dollars. This is not one of them. I don't care how much it's over, 25% over. I consider Scott's guesstimation a couple years ago, was probably pretty accurate. I think they got a lot of fluff in this bid because of the time of the year. We listened to an expert a couple weeks ago, a paint expert, been in the paint business for a bunch of years. He said, now is not the time to put down epoxy paint. I have to trust him. He was in that business. So those two items there is being way over budget. I'm not saying not doing the project. Next year would be okay. If we still want to do it, bring the price down a little bit. Don't just spend money foolishly. A few of you aldermen will be running for re-election this next year. I hope every one of you understand that this is a pretty hot topic. If you think the people aren't looking at your being frugal and how you spend tax dollars, you're wrong. They remember this. Overspending. Buy. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderperson Nabel.
I'd just like to mention that I know this is a hot topic, and it's become that for specific reasons. There's a lot of other things that we were going to spend money on that I felt that, again, we are the stewards of the money, but I think this is going to do something much more than a couple other projects that cost us a lot of money to do. I look at this as it is going to be something as a community development thing that will make a difference in this area. And we are not a highway, and there is Green Avenue people can take. There's other directions they can go to get to the main four-way roads. So, people will do whatever they're going to do. They're already doing this with the parking. They're moving further out. You cannot keep people from being foolish at times that they want to save, or save 5 minutes here or there. You can only make things as safe as you can. And I think what we're trying to do is make it safer, and the stop signs or whatever goes over there is a second part to this, that as this gets done, then can look at it more clearly to see what is the best options to do for people crossing. I don't think that's being left out. It's being pushed back so that we are doing this frugally and not spending money and then having to pull something out. If we've been doing this with the parking, it's been not frugal, let me tell you. So, anything that we're doing new causes a backlash, and people aren't going to like it. But stating that I was okay with the parking that we put in, that charging for parking in my neighborhood, it's not the best thing for everybody there, but in the long run, it's best for the city. And that's the way I tried to tell it to people when they came to me. It's the same thing with this. If we're going to be just saying that we're trying to save money here, in the long run, what it can do is so much more. So it bothers me that there's been so many misconstrued stories said and information that has made this an agenda when it's really not an agenda about biking or even the pedestrians. It's making it there. People want to live in an area where our town is saying something, and we have to make a decision what we want our city to look like. And we have to stand behind it. We can't say we're green and then not be green, that we're a walkable city, that we have all these things about birds. We need to start showing it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
I call the question, please.
Okay, we actually have other people that need to speak, Alderperson.
Okay.
You, I think, are the only one that hasn't spoken. Did you have comments that you wanted to make?
I think all the comments have already been pretty well done.
Okay, thank you. Alderperson Jennings, then.
Yes, there's good reasons for the epoxy. One is latex can be painted over epoxy. Epoxy cannot be painted over latex. Epoxy is bright white, and it has much greater durability, and it stays bright white. This is an older road, so without bright white and bright yellow, it's not going to be clear what the design is telling drivers to do. As if you do latex, it's going to fade in 1 year. It always does. So you're going to have confusion about what the design is telling people. It's one of many reasons to use epoxy. The other is durability. The transportation planner for WISDOT, the North Central region, he emailed me right after the May vote for Special Common Council. And he stated, quote, "I believe once the first segment of Stanley Street is restriped and people drive it, they will see that the 3-lane facility works well. The toughest part is to get the first road diet segment established," unquote. I've spent hours standing on the side of Stanley Street with Dan Tyler, the WISDOT expert on road diets, going through everything with Joe from engineering, and the argument for congestion simply does not hold up. And there's a mountain of evidence to say that. Mountain of facts. Just talk to DOT. They can explain that. Last thing. What does local government do? It makes decisions about quality of life and puts in place policy that shapes the community. That's what I'm trying to do. I'm not doing this to try to get reelected. I'm doing it because I think it's the right thing for this community, and I will vote no on this motion.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments? Alderperson Shore?
So I can either run through some quick comments responding to points that have come up, and then finish, I guess. Alder Morrow called the question. Would it be okay if I went one more time briefly here?
Okay.
Okay. The calling of the question, and City Attorney can correct me if I'm wrong, I think we use it in a way that is not what is it intended to do. Calling of the question officially requires a vote of the body.
Right. I don't want to step on his motion, and so that's why I thought maybe the simplest way is just to ask his indulgence, which he gave me.
Okay. And just for the record, Alderperson, I have some additional comments at the end as well.
I appreciate my colleague Alder Phillips for pointing out that this is a hot topic. I'm aware it's a hot topic. I've already taken a little bit of heat for this. So just a couple more words on that. It's already been said that there are people definitely in support of that, though they may not be as loud as some of the people who are opposed. I want to say quickly one more thing about people who are opposed. I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, many of them opposed, and I've said before that I've had two kinds of interactions. One, where we have a genuine dialogue and get to understand where we're coming from, and that doesn't always end up in anybody being convinced, but we agree to disagree. I went and visited with a couple on Lindbergh, a constituent couple, just yesterday afternoon for an hour, and that was exactly what happened. They were curious, they were skeptical but curious. We had a great discussion. We understood each other better, and we agreed on some other things that we talked about. So enough on that. Maybe not too much to be said about moving traffic and congestion, and Tori's point, but those are the facts. You know, in the same way we wouldn't even be having this discussion if emergency services couldn't, you know, meet their needs. In the exact same way, we wouldn't be talking about this if average daily traffic was double or more what it is. We are way below the threshold for congestion issues by about half. And trends of traffic on that road are negative. Those numbers are not going up, they're going down. Busy times. The intersection of Michigan and Maine is in my district. And I think it's a border.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And we wouldn't make our traffic plans based on 3 p.m. or 3:05 or whatever when the school buses are coming out of PJ's, right? The possibility of congestion actually in the AECOM analysis did have to do with the four-way stop. And that's what we would check out once we put it in. People are concerned about getting out of their driveways, and this may be something I didn't do the greatest job in speaking to, so I will do briefly now, and this will be my last words. Right now, yes, people have a full right-hand lane coming out of their driveways. They would not have that. They would still have the space that was opened up for bikes. And it's been said that it's one thing to have a wonderful, green circle trail for recreation, but some people use bikes for transportation, and none of us who drive cars, and we all drive cars, would be very happy about being confined to the back roads and the neighborhood streets with all the stopping and all the turning. You want to get from point A to point B as fast, and bicyclists have that right as much as anyone. And oh, by the way, I'll mention the millennials one last time. They are driving less than their parents and grandparents by a lot. It's why we bought the old rail bed of the CN line, for that exact reason. And for that exact reason, we just need to start having a better network. Yeah, it is going to be good for business. The directors, addressed this. I was just reading a study that said, they did a controlled study, shops in walkable areas versus shops in malls, and there were 4 times the amount of sales in the shops in walkable areas. Sorry, driveways. There still will be the bike lane to move into if you're going right. Your car is probably wider than 5 feet. Okay, but you're not taking up that whole lane. If there happens to be someone and there's a situation, they can use a little bit of the middle lane. So that's backing out to the right. Backing out to the left becomes easier. You're not watching all the 4 lanes of traffic. You're watching the one direction that you're crossing, and you have somewhere to go. And if you want to do it in 2 moves, you go there, and you take a little less time doing this because you do it in halves. Anyway, I'm sure that's more than enough. Thank you, Alder.
Okay. Alderperson Phillips.
I didn't know what we're discussing here. Lanes, crossing over, parking.
City attorney says that it is
Turn around.
within the
The motion on the floor is to reject the bid, which is way over budget, and that's what it's about. You either want to or you don't.
Right. I would agree
Call for
with
the
you.
question.
So, again, as I said, I have a few comments, and I'm doing this, I talked with President Johnson about when to speak and engage, because I'm a member of this body as well. Her suggestion was speak at the end. So that's what I've been doing, issuing my comments at the end. There was a mention made that it's not going to, this extra money isn't going to make a big dent in the $5 million that we had to cut out of our proposed capital budget. And I would say it does. The request for street repairs was $750,000. We had to cut that significantly, and we added a little bit back because we don't need to apply the TAP grant money until 2020, so that allowed us to spend some more money in 2019 to give Director Badun some additional funds to do those street repairs. Potholes this year were the worst I've seen in a very long time. There are certain projects, and any of the directors can speak to this if they want, but we've had several internal discussions in relation to the capital budget. There are several projects that the director could do should there be any available funds in the 2019 or 2018 budget, including but not limited to pothole repair, crack filling, the Cozy Street, for example, and you mentioned a few other ones, but I think everybody gets the gist about it. It's not going to sit in a pile unused. We're going to use projects, or use that money for projects. Director Schrader at the Parks Department could tell you that $40,000 could go a long way to putting in that filter replacement upgrade in the pool. Right now, we have to have someone that shuffles down basically a manhole to clean out the filter because it's that old. The fire chief could use some hose reels and some additional safety gear at the firehouse should this money become available. And I know the police chief with fentanyl and ex-fentanyl could use some gas masks put back in when those drug officers are coming on site. Just touching some of these drugs can cause an overdose. Those are the types of things that we had to cut from this year's proposal for capital budget. So the money will not go unused. There are plenty of worthy projects that this could be used for. As the director said, now the initial estimate, it was never a bid, it was an estimate from the previous director who was an engineer and used his best judgment to get a ballpark, came up with $60,000. We had that reviewed, as Director Badun had said, by AECom, an engineering firm, that said, yeah, we were probably a little bit low, but still not anywhere near this $96,000. And I can tell you that you all know this because we have restriping for about 14 miles coming up to do bike lanes with the TAP grant. 14 miles is estimated the striping cost is going to be about $400. You don't need a calculator to figure out how much that is per mile. We're talking about less than 4,000 feet here. I have every reason to believe that when we rebid this in spring, we are going to save, as the director said, the engineer with his professional opinion, 10 to 20%. Especially like the idea of buying our own equipment, so we'll be able to have this and restripe it if it fades after a year or 2 years. We have painting crews that go out now every single year. But having this piece of equipment, if it works out, would allow us to be able to do other projects with that. We are charged with being good stewards of the money. We're also exploring some of the options to save some of that money because we don't have extra money laying around. So I believe that if we wait till spring to do this and rebid, we will not only have several options for you to consider, but I think we'll have a lower bid as well. As the director said, there's no guarantees, of course, but when we're looking at $400,000 for 14 miles of striping and almost $100,000 for less than a mile of striping, I think that tells you that one of those prices is probably a little bit off.
Point of information?
Yes, sir.
Right on point. As I understand it in the TAP grant, in the 13, that's not 13 miles, all stripes and bike lanes, so some of that's just sharrows.
13 miles of bike lanes.
No.
That's what it's for.
No.
Okay. I'll take that back. Because that's what the TAP grant is designed for, putting in those bike accommodations. regardless, you know what the prices are for striping.
But if 6 miles of it is Sharrows, or 8 miles, whatever it is, I don't know what it is, but
Okay.
some non-trivial, substantial portion of it is just Sharrows.
Fair enough. Anyway, that's enough out of me. I will then, the motion on the floor is to reject this bid. If you are in favor of rejecting the bid, you will vote yes or aye. If you are opposed to rejecting the bid, you will vote nay or no. And the clerk will call the roll.
Jennings.
Nay.
Shore.
Nay.
Nabel.
Nay.
Johnson.
Nay.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Kneebone.
No.
Dugan.
Nay.
McComb.
No.
Phillips.
Aye.
Morrow.
Aye.
371, the motion fails. Alderperson McComb.
So what can we do to ask the Public Works Director to present us with, to talk about possible change orders?
You would ask the director.
We can do that in the context of accepting the bid.
No, once you accept the bid, the bid is there for not to exceed $96,900.25. If there are things you'd like to change in that, I would suggest that you talk to the director now.
Well,
Yeah.
What are we allowed on change
but
orders?
Can't change the bid.
Hang on, let's get some clarification here, because when we're talking about change orders, I don't know that that's even relevant to accepting the bid or not accepting the bid.
Well, it might not
Because it
be.
doesn't
I'm
exceed.
just
Right.
thinking
No,
forward.
and I want to make sure you get a definite, correct answer. And I don't know.
I would actually defer to Director Badun on that. He's got more experience with that particular type of subject matter than I do. Scott, did you want to comment on?
Sure. With that, I guess there's really, two ways it could otherwise be done is to get, I see, the total bid price with contingency and then just otherwise be directed to find savings within there. The other is we could take those quantities out, just recalculate that and go that route. However, there's always a risk in doing that before the contract was awarded, because the contractor submitted a bid and they're expecting something. We need to work with them to be in good faith to say, that we can't just pull the rug out from underneath there. So it would be more or less the entire bid price, and then we'll work towards savings after the award.
Okay, and so just, again, for my clarification and potentially some of the alders, if there are significant change orders, we're not doing a certain chunk of it, in this case, let's say the crosswalks, if we pull that out, if we significantly change the bid, is there an issue with that?
I think so.
If to change it in that direction, no, we can change order out components of there, basically at will. Now, there gets to a certain point in time, we're just operating in good faith where, we do need to offset some of those other costs because, they are for profit. For taking various parts out, we may find some other changes in other places. We may not necessarily get the full value of what everything is that we're looking for. There may be a component in there that they need to complete or should be given within there. Really, the only restriction within there is adding to a contract. There is statute that we can't add significant portions of it to just to get around. That's just a protection to get around the bidding laws. But as far as removing from it, we're free to do what we wish.
Okay, so they would still be obligated if we accept this bid right now in $96,900.25, and we pull out, say, $10,000 to $20,000 worth of work, is that bid still valid?
When we start changing that, I have to read the actual language that we utilize there. If we're going to work that way, I'd have to find out what outs they have, but there is a certain point I know where they could just take their bid back once we start getting into what would be otherwise considered a negotiation of sorts. So
Okay.
we can't just automatically assume that everything we do is going to be acceptable to them based upon how we bid it, although we do have some leeway to at least offer up that work that direction.
Okay. fair enough. I'm not sure I completely understand it, but I think we're okay. Alderperson Shore?
I move we accept the bid. I think there's enough to work with here, as described. And I just want to make sure that as we accept the bid, that we understand that higher figure of 96,000, whatever it is with contingency. But the bid, the heart of the bid and the projected cost is actually the 84 plus whatever. And if that means putting both into the motion, that's fine. But, we keep talking about the higher figure with contingency, and the reason that there are leftover resources to even be discussing this at this point in the budget cycle is precisely because other contracts did not eat up all that contingency. So I move that we accept the bid.
Accept the bid in the amount of $96,900.25. Is that correct?
Use the language that's there. Does not exceed 96,000.
Well, the earlier, it came to, last time I saw this at Board of Public Works, it listed both numbers. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
Right.
What is your motion, Alderperson?
I move that we award the Stanley Street pavement marking project to Century Fence Company for the epoxy-based bid in the amount not to exceed $96,900.25.
Thank you. Seconded by Alderperson Jennings. God help me. Is there any other further discussion? Okay, hearing none. If you are in favor of accepting the motion, you will vote yes or aye. If you are opposed, you will vote no or nay, and the clerk will call the roll.
Morrow.
No.
Phillips.
No.
McComb.
Yes.
Dugan.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Slawinski.
No.
Johnson.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Jennings.
Aye.
731.
731, the motion is adopted. Item number 19.
Can I ask one last question? I know it's all.
It's over. It's over.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you have something to say, Alderperson?
The advice I was just given by Alder Phillips.
Okay, because the item is over. All right. Item number 19 is an ordinance amendment for creation of Chapter 35 Weights and Measures Program. Anybody need a refresher on why we're doing this? No? Nope. Alderperson Kneebone.
I would move to approve the ordinance amendment for the creation of Chapter 35 Weights and Measures Program.
Okay, seconded by, we'll give it to Alderperson Shore, since he didn't get to speak again at the last one. Discussion? Nothing?
Don't push it.
If you are in favor of the motion, you will vote yes. If you are opposed, vote no, and the clerk will call the roll.
Jennings.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
McComb.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Morrow.
Aye.
1001.
1001, that is adopted. Item number 20 is an ordinance amendment for building and premises maintenance and occupancy. Notices, fees for repeat offenses, sections 21.13 sub 2 of the revised municipal code. Alderpersons, what are your wishes? Alderperson Nabel.
I would like to move to approve the ordinance amendment of building and premise maintenance and occupancy notice fees for repeat offenses.
Thank you. Seconded by Alderperson Morrow. Discussion there. President Johnson.
Just one comment. I want to thank.
That's what they all say.
May I say what I have to say?
Absolutely.
Thank you, sir. I just want to thank Michael Ostrowski and his staff. I think this is going to be a very useful tool, and I think it's going to help make our community better, and I think it was a great idea. So.
Okay. Any other comments? Hearing none, clerk, would you please call the roll?
Morrow.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
McComb.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Johnson.
Excuse me. Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Jennings.
Aye.
1001.
1001, that is adopted. Item number 21 is an ordinance amendment for building and premises maintenance and occupancy, the creation of a rental registration program, section 21.10 and 21.20 of the revised municipal code. Alderperson Dugan.
I move to approve the ordinance amendment, building and premises maintenance and occupancy, creation of a rental registration program. I'm happy to do so.
Thank you. Seconded by Alderperson Nabel. Discussion? Comments from the audience? Seeing no one, clerk, would you please call the roll?
Jennings.
Aye.
Shore.
Aye.
Nabel.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Slawinski.
Aye.
Kneebone.
Aye.
Dugan.
Aye.
McComb.
Aye.
Phillips.
Aye.
Morrow.
Aye.
1001.
1001, that is adopted. Item number 22 is pulled, and therefore we have no items left on the agenda, so we can all, oh, wait a minute, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I misread this. I am very sorry. Clerk Mo. Three minutes. You'll have 3 minutes.
Mary puts the timer.
I was going to ask for your keys to the city back. But apparently we don't have, well, we do have those now, I guess. So, but what I would like to do, before you are allowed to speak one last time, I would like to present this little token of our appreciation for you for all your years of service. It says, in recognition of your dedicated public service as city clerk, the people of the city of Stevens Point extend their profound appreciation and sincere gratitude to John Moe, serving May 2005 through September of 2018.
Thank you very much.
Would it be a great job to come into
Clerk, you have the floor.
I'll never hear that sound.
It's only a page, so I'm sure I'll be done well before that goes off. So. I just wanted to express to you all my great appreciation for the opportunity to come before you tonight and express what it has meant for me to serve this great community for the last 13 plus years. As you know, I'm not a very good politician, I'll admit that. I'm not very good at public speaking or writing long documents, but I go to work every day to work as hard as I possibly can to be a good public servant. It has been a great privilege to serve the good people of Stevens Point for the past 13 plus years as city clerk. It is truly something that I will remember fondly for the rest of my life. My goal was to provide open and transparent government while also being fiscally responsible. I have enjoyed being a resource to the public, to my alderpersons, to the other government officials, and I am proud of what we were able to accomplish during my tenure. I implemented reforms that improved customer service and access to city information. I returned tens of thousands of dollars to the city's general fund through fiscal restraint. Increased outreach to community organizations regarding voting, and oversaw the implementation of some of the most extensive election law changes in the state's recent history. Some of my more notable accomplishments were the writing of the Citizens' Right to Address the Common Council, or most people call it the right to speak, and working with state legislatures from both sides of the aisle to pass a law modernizing the publication of budget amendments notices. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank my family, particularly my wife as she and my daughters have had to make sacrifices over the years in order for me to serve. I'd like to take this opportunity also to thank my staff, Carrie and Marissa, for all their hard work and dedication. I'd like also to thank my fellow department heads, some over here and those back there, and all the city employees, including the other citywide elected officials, and of course the alderpersons that I've gotten to know and worked with over the years. It has truly been a privilege working with each and every one of you. I wish you all the very best. Thank you.
And with that, our agenda is exhausted, and we are adjourned.
A video of this meeting is available for viewing on the city's website, stevenspoint.com/videos.